If I knew then what I know now, I would never end up with rheumatoid arthritis. My body was giving me so many different signs that I was going down that path, but unfortunately I didn't know. And so today I will share with you a list of symptoms that foreshadow a chronic disease such as autoimmunity. Welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Sylvia and I'm a carnivore diet coach. So let's start by defining what autoimmunity really is. Now, if you go to a conventional doctor, you'll be told that, oh, you have bad genetics, your own body is attacking itself, there's currently no cure for it, we don't know why your body does it, but we can give you lots of medication for life to manage your symptoms. Now, this was simply not acceptable for me. This whole framing that my own body attacks itself just sounded kind of ludicrous. So I continued searching. So finally, I came to understand that autoimmunity is actually an issue of chronic leaky gut syndrome. Now, mainstream medicine accepts leaky gut syndrome in terms of irritable bowel syndrome. But if you continue looking for answers, you'll find out that the leaky gut is at the center of all chronic disease, including autoimmune disorders, about 200 of them. Now, when I understood that autoimmunity, things like rheumatoid arthritis, is really the issue of my leaky gut, and I started focusing on leaky gut, not my joints, not my immune system, things began to improve. You probably want to know how one ends up with a leaky gut. It's actually quite simple. Your gut lining is full of tight junctions. You can think of them as microscopic doors that open up for a short period of time to absorb the nutrients, but they should close to things like gluten and other lectins, other toxins and fragments of bacteria. But if you are exposed to gluten way too much than what your body can tolerate, those tight junctions can just remain open for way too long, allowing gluten and other lectins, toxins to get into your bloodstream, travel other places, and let's say attach to your joint tissue. Now, then your immune system gets alarmed, it launches inflammation, and if this continues for extended period of time, eventually your immune system will develop antibodies for those funny proteins that should never be in your bloodstream or attached to any of your tissues. And this is how you get diagnosed with autoimmunity. I guess that's when your genetics comes to play, because depending on your genetic blueprint and the type of lectins that your body will be sensitive to, and those lectins will have affinity for different types of tissues, this is where different antibodies get created, and we can test through your blood work for about 200 different antibodies that your body can develop based on wherever the toxic load is and whichever the tissue is affected. So let's talk about symptoms that your body will be giving you before you actually get diagnosed with autoimmunity, that you are going down that path. And let's start with seasonal allergies. Seasonal allergies is one of the first signs that your body is overreacting to its environment. And I was so sensitive, especially in the season of going from summer to fall, when the temperature was dropping and I was exposed to a cool wind. My eyes would get itchy, watery, swollen. I would get all these red blotches on my face. I would have to go back inside, take some antihistamine medication. And then over time, I would adapt to cooler temperatures. But it was super annoying, and I had to take the antihistamine medication. Now, this makes sense because if your body is contaminated with toxins, some lectins, maybe some things from the environment, perhaps that's what I was reacting to, and my immune system was on a high alert because I was recognizing some things in the environment that were already in my tissues, and my immune system was fighting it. Another interesting telltale sign that something is going wrong with your body and you are on the path to chronic disease is feeling bloated after you eat. Now, normally you should feel hungry, and after you eat, you should not feel hungry. If you have to loosen your belt, if you feel tired, if you feel that your waist is expanding, things are not going right in your gut and you are dealing with some underlying problems that you should not ignore. Feeling bloated after you eat isn't normal. Feeling fatigued and having mental fog after you eat your lunch, and then following up with coffee and some sweet treats so that you can get through the rest of the day, is another telltale sign that your gut is inflamed and you are on the path to chronic disease. Especially if you eat something that contains gluten. That means that gluten gets into your bloodstream and can travel to your brain, giving you that mental fog. You should not ignore this sign and start addressing leaky gut issues. Yet another way your body is telling you your gut is not doing all that great are too frequent bowel movements or chronic constipation. So I hear it quite often when people will tell me that they have their steak with their mashed potatoes and they just can't digest the proteins and the body has to purge it. Now the next step for them is, well, I don't have enough stomach acids, therefore I need to replace my steak with, let's say, chicken that is easier to digest. Now that is a wrong strategy because you want to maintain strong stomach acid, because weak stomach acid will cause changes to your gut microbiome. Those imbalances in your gut microbiome will affect negatively your gut lining, and those tight junctions can start opening up, leading to leaky gut, and leaky gut will lead to chronic disease such as autoimmunity. So you need to focus on maintaining of the strong stomach acid. And there is a group of people that is particularly sensitive to carbohydrates. So the better strategy is to remove the starches such as mashed potatoes and keep eating your steak. Try it. I'm sure you will have great results. On the other hand, there is a group of people that will deal with chronic constipation, and this was the case with me. I had chronic constipation, which the doctors classified as idiopathic for most of my adult life. And I later learned that it was a consequence of overgrowth of Prevotella copri, a type of bacteria that populates your gut, and inadequate amounts of other bacteria. And those bacteria, if they overgrow too much, they produce specific enzymes and specific toxins that increase your leaky gut, and they'll also make digestion and moving of the food through your gut much more difficult. And the fiber isn't a solution because Prevotella copri loves fiber and keeps growing even more. So no wonder I tried every possible fiber that there was and I was never getting better. And I tell you one other interesting fun fact. Vegans and vegetarians have their gut microbiome severely populated with Prevotella copri. And also, the biggest probably subgroup of people that end up on the carnivore diet are former vegans and vegetarians. Just remember this, Prevotella copri. Another interesting telltale sign that you are developing chronic disease is frequent neck and shoulder pain. I used to always think that it was due to stress until I went carnivore, because that neck and shoulder pains just went away when I went on the carnivore diet. I then figured out that it was a combination of drinking coffee and consuming foods that had gluten in it. No wonder my gut was super leaky. I was eating gluten, and other compounds that are in coffee were traveling into the muscle tissue and into my nerves, and it was triggering those muscle spasms and pain in my neck and shoulders. And now they're gone, but the stress is still there. Related to the neck and shoulder pain, Another telltale signs are frequent migraines, and of course that was a case with me. And with time, I started recognizing it, that if I had my afternoon cappuccino with some pastry, let's say a croissant, sweeten my cappuccino with stevia, it was a guaranteed recipe to trigger a migraine headache. Now I understand it now. I had super leaky gut. Gluten and other compounds from coffee, not just caffeine, were traveling to my brain, constricting the blood vessels and causing migraine. When I went carnivore, I have not had another migraine ever since. And last but not least, telltale sign that you are on your way to autoimmunity are occasional pains in your joints. And that also was the case with me. So usually after I partied and I had some various alcoholic beverages, I would have this funny pain either in my wrist, in my shoulder, or in my fingers. Now they would go on for a couple days and then it would resolve and I would be okay for a few months. And now I understand that this was an episode of increased gut permeability, the leaky gut. I was probably triggering it with alcohol, but my gut lining wasn't so compromised that it was able to fix itself and then the joint pain would resolve on its own. Now, had I known then what I know now, I would probably never allow it to become a more frequent joint pain, and then I ended up having it chronically that it would never go away. I would just start addressing my leaky gut, I would avoid the foods that cause leaky gut, and I would probably never end up with autoimmunity. So now that you know that autoimmunity is an issue of leaky gut, you can address it really effectively and with great results. And what I did, I went on for 6 months on a very strict carnivore diet, which was paleo-ketogenic diet protocol, and that resolved all of my health issues. Now, if you're at the stage that you are experiencing some of the symptoms I was describing in today's video, pay attention to your gut. You don't have to go full-blown carnivore just yet, but cutting out alcohol, lectins, gluten, some leafy greens might be an option, just good enough to stop the progression of leaky gut in its tracks. I have many videos about how I started on the carnivore diet, my experiences with autoimmunity. Check them out. I will link some of them in the description box. And this will do it for this week's video. If you haven't yet, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!